It takes an awful lot to repeat as NFL champions, but the Philadelphia Eagles have what it takes up front. I have questions about their secondary, and I'll explain.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That is a fact, man. It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the barbershop here on the Locked On NFL Network and Locked On NFL that you can hear twice a day here on our podcast network that you can also find wherever you get your podcasts. All you got to do is just go there, whether you watch or listen, and we'll be there free to subscribe to. We give you the biggest stories from around the NFL. We dig through the crates and find out what's going on around the league. And Kevin Ostriker and I are going to do just that today. So we appreciate the everydayers joining us. And if it's your first time, hopefully we'll give you an understanding and a reason to come back and hang out with us here in the barbershop. We're going to close the show later by talking about Patrick Mahomes. The last time I saw him, he was running for his life. Well, he's throwing the ball deep again. That means he trusts his offensive line. A New York state of mind. What is going on with the Giants and the Jets? Normally we pick at them, but we're going to try to point out some positives for both of them today. And we're going to start the show right here by not burying the lead, getting to the top of this thing, the Eagles, and what they must do to repeat as champions. One thing they got to do, Kevin Ostriker, is replace Darius Slay and Rodgers, a little backup corner that they had last year, but they also have to replace C.J. Gardner-Johnson. We've kind of taken for granted because they've done so good in the draft that, they'll just plug somebody in. Well, doesn't look like they're having as much success with Kelee Ringo as they thought they were.
Yeah, and I mean, the Eagles are a team that largely relied on their depth last season. They have the star power, and their stars certainly got them to where they needed to go. Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, obviously Jalen Hurts, and on the defensive side of the ball, as you mentioned, Darius Slay is not prime Darius Slay anymore, but he still is a solid contributor, and sometimes you got to fill those voids with draft picks. Sometimes you got to fill them with younger players, and sometimes you got to fill them with free agents / trades. And, Cooper DeJean and Kenyon Mitchell, those are two really bright young stars, but it's also about the depth that you have. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, yep, he's now in Houston. Like, you have to find other ways. And look, they still made good moves this offseason, but I think a lot of people just assume that you can plug and play guys with ease in offenses, defenses, just teams in general, where it takes a little more than that, where those things that worked for you last season with certain players might not work for you this year with different players. So I'm not here saying the Eagles defense is going to be bad or the secondary is going to be bad. Like, I'm not saying that, but I do think that there's going to have to be just a bit of an adjustment period. How long is that adjustment period? I don't know. I still trust Philadelphia to come out of the NFC. There's still some teams that are going to compete with them, but in my opinion, that secondary, it's going to have to perform without some key veterans.
Yep. And that means the guys that they have had in development have to step up. Kelee Ringo. Doesn't seem like he's doing it now. Listen to my man Lou DiBiase for Locked On Eagles.
So I think what we're witnessing with Kelee Ringo is Rasul Douglas 2.0 all over again in Philadelphia. We're witnessing the same thing. It's a front office that believes in a player and a coach that doesn't. Jim Schwartz didn't believe in Rasul Douglas. He didn't believe in the strengths of Zul. His defense kind of exposed his weaknesses. He didn't fit that scheme. I think the same thing's happening for Kelee Ringo. He's just with the wrong defensive coordinator that wants certain things in a player, and Ringo's weaknesses don't really fit well into this defense. But his strengths are clear and obvious. 6'3", an elite wingspan, sub 4.3 long-range speed. I think he's someone that's going to end up thriving in another city, in Tampa Bay or Dallas, a team like that plays man-heavy coverage. I just don't think he's going to get an opportunity now that Jacorian Bennett's been dealt to Philadelphia. I think he's a favorite to win this job. Adoree Jackson's been getting more reps than Ringo. It stinks because I love the player, but I just don't think it's a fit with Fangio.
Man, Howie Roseman can't hit them all, can he? He's been nailing all of these draft picks. Kenyon Mitchell last year, man. Cooper DeJean, he's pulled all the right. But I heard Smile Mondon, who's also from Georgia, is whipping people in camp as a rookie. But the one that he seems like he might not hit on is Keely Ringo, and that's big because Jaden Daniels and all those dudes, they're loading up, and the Giants are loading up with a bunch of receivers in that division.
Yeah, and you're right. The reputation Harry Roseman has is, man, he's just going to find all these guys, and he never misses. And, like, he's going to get the Eagles where they need to go with those guys. And it is unrealistic that you hit on every single player. But sometimes the reality is when you do miss on a player and you do miss on a position, it can set you back regardless of how good that you are. So, and I think the big thing with Howie is, he's making deals. Jacorian Bennett from the Raiders is now in. So if he sees a problem or if he is not happy with a certain positional group or a player, he goes out there and addresses it, but we'll kind of see how it all unfolds for him here.
Yeah, and the key for me is, does this mean that they won't repeat? No, this doesn't mean that they won't repeat. What this means is there's just more than one way to skin a cat. I just think they'll have to be a little bit more explosive on offense, and y'all will be like, wait a minute, they have to be more explosive? Yeah, that because they did depend on that defense to set the table up for them a little bit last year. But if they have to go out and score an extra touchdown, they definitely have the ability to do that. I'll give you an example of a team that has won in different ways, the Chiefs. They haven't won this thing the same way every time. They've had a lot of the same players, but some years they were able to hit big plays. And then the last championship they won a couple of years ago, it kind of had the nickel and dime it a little bit. And that shows you that teams can do this more than one way. They might have to do it because they didn't have a good offensive line last year. I heard Mahomes is going deep again, though. Check this out.
The deep ball is back in Kansas City, and Mahomes continues to push the ball down the field. Mahomes maximizing targets, hitting a lot of different guys, and continuing to push the ball down the field. This is a theme of training camp this year, and we see it in just about every segment of training camp, whether it's 7-on-7 or actual team drills. He is continually pushing the ball down the field.
Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball back down the field. Does that mean that the Chiefs, as we know them, are back and they can now trust the edges of their offensive line group?
Man, I hope so for their sake. I mean, we saw how it happened in the Super Bowl for them last year. We saw how it happened in this other Super Bowl they lost. Really, for the Chiefs, it's like it's all or nothing in these Super Bowls, I guess, for these offensive lines. So it's either they're able to protect them or it is not going to go well for you. Right. So look, Josh Simmons, their first round pick, has been a guy that apparently is just absolutely balling out for them so far. That's really good. But, they also did lose guys like Joe Thuney is now in Chicago. They had to make some tough decisions there. And Joe Thuney was one of their guys that you really liked for them because of his positional versatility and some of the other abilities that he had. I mean, Kingsley Suamataia is going to have to be a really big part of their line. He's kind of been disappointing. I mean, from last year as rookie year, I think they expected more from him. Jawan Taylor, we know, and I know Wig, about Jawan Taylor and what he brings and what he doesn't bring sometimes. Yeah. So, it's going to be a matter of like these top tier quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, like they are elevators of talent and they can make offensive lines look better than they are, but they can't do it all by themselves. Right. If the offensive line is not good or if they're consistently letting up pressure, that is going to get to even the best quarterbacks in the game. So the Chiefs, they did the right thing by investing in the offensive line. I think that Simmons, the KC pick, was one of the more telegraphed picks of the draft, considering how good of a player he is and the reason he fell due to injury. So if they're able to kind of get him, Trey Smith is back, locked up long-term. So you like that. Creed Humphreys, obviously, it's not a bad offensive line. Mm-hmm. I just think that sometimes they underperform. And when it happens in the biggest moment, it's going to come back to bite you.
You say biggest moment, you're right about that. But what it is the biggest moment is because it's against another good team. Again, and when you're playing against good teams, the margins are this big. And you know that. You're Ravens. You guys have made a couple of little mistakes. And if you just took one of them back, you'd have probably been in the Super Bowl. So this is all about not whether they can have a really good season as they're configured. It's about whether or not that good season ends when they run into a good team because of their weakness. The Giants and the Jets don't necessarily have to worry about whether people think they're good or not, but they are trying to change the narratives of their respective franchises. Jackson is throwing darts, I heard, up in New York. We'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means NFL football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and my friends in the Showtime and Playmakers League, we're playing on Yahoo for the 16th year in a row, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your 1 millionth league. To celebrate 20 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, moving and grooving here with my main man, Kevin Ostriker from Locked On Ravens, as we discuss some of the things that's going on around the league. And I got to go to New York and my girl, Patricia Trainer, because she says Jackson is throwing darts. What does that mean for Jameis Winston? What does that mean for Russell Wilson? And what does it mean for the New York Giants? Listen to Patty talk about Jackson Dart.
Jackson Dart has had a lot of highs, and they've been good. He's made, good reads. He's handled, adverse situations well. Now, there have been times, especially in the beginning, when the ball was coming out of his hand a little slowly, when he wasn't making the quick reads that you would like to see. Sometimes that still happens, especially in the face of pressure. But there's been a gradual improvement compared to where he was maybe a week or so ago. So he's heading in the right direction.
All right, so I kind of made you feel like Jackson Dart was ready to take somebody's job. He's not ready to do that. But this does sound good for me because I'll tell you why, Kevin. I'll let you comment on it. A rookie that is not speedballing and rushing to get the ball out, he's holding the ball. That means some people may look at that as, well, he's slow to go through his progressions. I look at it as he's still being patient under all of that heat coming at him, and he's trying to go through his progressions. And what that does is that means he's mentally trying to slow the game down without worried about getting hit. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, for what you have with Jackson Dart, this is what you're trying to figure out, how he handles some of these moments and how he's able to go about his business. And this is not the finished product for Jackson Dart, right? All the good and the bad that comes with training camp. And I thought J.J. Watt put it pretty perfectly a couple weeks ago, where you don't know what these guys are working on specifically in some of these drills. So you got to take stats in training camp with a grain of salt, because they're always working on stuff. You want to work on stuff before you get to the regular season, so you don't have to work on stuff when the games actually count and when the practices actually matter. So I think that for me, Jackson Dart's not expected to start for them this season, at least early on, right? Early on, it's expected to be a veteran. Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, they're there. And those are two great vets to have, by the way, for Jackson Dart in your corner to help learn from. They've had a lot of experiences in the NFL. But to me, they're all the good and all the bad that we've heard about Jackson Dart. To me, I think it's all just part of the learning process. And for a lot of these young rookie quarterbacks, as they try to find their footing in the NFL, it's really important for them to go through some good practices and some bad practices. Sometimes, you always want to hear about, oh, Jackson Dart went 12 of 12 and threw 5 touchdowns, but sometimes you have to learn. And I always equate it to the spring training of football. Like this is what training camp is, where guys are working on things. And honestly, quarterbacks, sometimes they go into training camp in some of these practices saying, what can I get away with here? Let me experiment and see if I can make this throw against an NFL defense and if it would work. And if it doesn't, if it's just continuously, nope, they say, okay, I'm not going to do that. But if they maybe find something and they're like, oh, hey, maybe I can do something like this season. So to me, I'm just glad Jackson Dart is getting experience in reps. I think to me, that's the most important part. Just get the reps in and hope he can learn from them.
Yeah, coaches would tell people to shut up real quick if they say, get the ball out. Coaches don't want you rushing to throw that thing, man. I mean, it's like that means you're playing scared. The other thing is, I always use analogies. The older you get, you use analogies, right? A long time ago, somebody was eating a hot dog. It wasn't like a real hot dog. It was like one of those things they call Franks, right? And I'm eating it, and dudes say, you know what they make that with, right? And I had the nerve to listen to them. And since then, I just been eating all beef hot dogs because I don't want to eat Franks anymore, right? So here's the thing, Kevin. If you really enjoy something like football, you don't want to know how it's made. And that's the thing. Stop telling people make mistakes at practice. Nobody cares about that because all you're going to do is ruin their mind and think that that's who they are. This is where nobody wants to know how it's made. And the thing is some people that go to practice, they shouldn't be talking about how it's made because they take every little thing and they blow it out of proportion. I think Jackson Dart's going to be fine. Just fine with due time as long as they don't rush him. Let's go across the street or the bridge or the subway, a different subway station or whatever you want to call it, and talk about the Jets. They got a lot that they need fixing. Passing game, offensive line, defense. But more than that, it's a belief system, culture. I think the fans who are great in New York and the media, well, the media is the media, but the media are starting to really understand who Coach Glenn is, Aaron Glenn, and what his hiring means to that team, and everybody's taken to it. Listen to how they're feeling about Aaron Glenn up in New York.
I don't want to go overboard praising Aaron Glenn. Now, I have to tell you, it's been a long time since a first-year coach has won me over to this extent where I'm actively rooting for him. I mean, look, I always root for the Jets coach, but I genuinely like Aaron Glenn's approach. So I'm never going to declare somebody a great coach before they've coached their first game. And I don't know for sure whether Glenn is going to be successful or not here, but I'm really rooting for him just because I just like him. I really like his approach to a lot of things. I like the way he interacts with the media. So I'm really hoping it works out. And of course, I hope it works out for every Jets coach, but I can't remember another Jets coach that I just liked this much this early in his tenure.
That's a good thing. Now they have to win in the wins and losses column. I don't know if he's going to work out either. I think he might. But one thing I will tell you, if you shrink in the moment in that area, in that city, you won't make it. And Philly is like that, and Baltimore, Washington, there's a few of them where being there, you have to understand it. I don't think Aaron Glenn gives one iota about any of that because I think who he is as who he was as a player and who he has been as a coach, it's tailor-made for that city or any other. If he won't be successful, it ain't going to be because he's afraid.
No, I do think it's a perfect fit for sure. And I just think it's refreshing. Like, if I were a Jets fan, I'd feel refreshed after everything. And look, I agree with John where he hasn't coached a game with the Jets yet, so you're not going to get too ahead of yourself and crown him, the next great coach of the organization. But I think that he has all the tools to be. Like, I think that you should be excited if you're a Jets fan. Like, you don't want to get too ahead of yourself and be like, man, this guy's going to win 7 Super Bowls for us. But you do have to look at who he is. And you mentioned Wig, who he was as a player and, who he's been. Fiery, someone who's confident. Like, you do need that in New York, right? You do need that with that media. And to me, I think that they're believing in Justin Fields, but the belief that Aaron Glenn has in Justin Fields, the belief that he has in his players, the way that he empowers his players, because he's been there. He's done that. And the fact that I think this Jets team in an AFC East that, clearly belongs to Buffalo, but there's a real opening for that second spot. And if you can get into that second spot, you might be able to sneak into a wild card spot and exceed expectations. I mean, we see it every year, Wig, with a team or
Denver.
two
Denver.
Yeah. What's the expectations for a team like the Commanders and they make it all the way to the championship game? Like, there is opportunity in an AFC East that, Miami, I think, is on the downturn. New England, I think, has potential, but how big of a leap they're going to be able to take this season. I think with a trio of Justin Fields, hopefully Breece Hall can continue to ascend, and then obviously Garrett Wilson is there too. Plus, you got defensive young stars like Sauce Gardner. It's like the roster, I think, is there. They invested in their offensive line. It might take a year or two to fully see the potential, and especially as the Jets round out their roster. But even if they don't win 15 games this season, which I'm not expecting them to, I would still expect there to be positive trends that maybe we haven't seen with the Jets in a really long time.
Sneaky little thing that they did 2 years in a row, they addressed their offensive line. And that's extremely important. They used high priority resources. Like when the team doesn't have a quarterback, some teams spend all of that time chasing a quarterback. They said, nope, we ain't going to do that. We're going to invest in these really, really good players at critical positions. And I think it might work out for them in the long haul. They just need to have a little bit of patience. Patrick Mahomes, he had patience last year, but he was running for his life. He ain't running for his life anymore. And New England has a pretty good shot of having another offensive lineman who's a rookie actually play significant snaps, but it's not Will Campbell. We'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Monarch Money. That is right, man. Monarch Money is there for you if you are like me and managing your money needs to feel easier, then it's Monarch Money. That's all there is to it. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. You need it if you're like me and you're not tech savvy and you got all of these different apps. I want to string everything through one app like Monarch Money and make it easier for me. I was paying for one subscription 3 times, and that's not acceptable. Take control of your finances like I did with Monarch Money and use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. I'm telling you, you're going to notice when you start tracking your spending that Monarch Money is the real deal. All right, moving here with Kevin Ostriker from Locked On Ravens. I'm Tony Wiggins, navigating you through the barbershop as we talk about these stories from around the National Football League that are driving the league. I peeked in on the Kansas City Chiefs because I always have to do that. 5 out of the last 6 years, they've been in the Super Bowl. The 2 times that they lost, they won 3, they lost 2. The 2 times they lost, it was ugly, like really ugly, right? And both of those losses happened the same way with Patrick Mahomes running for his life. They tried to fix that this offseason. Evidently in practice, they think they got it fixed because Patrick Mahomes is going deep. Listen to the boys from Locked On Chiefs.
The deep ball's back in Kansas City, and Mahomes continues to push the ball down the field. Mahomes maximizing targets, hitting a lot of different guys, and continuing to push the ball down the field. This is a theme of training camp this year, and we see it in just about every segment of training camp, whether it's 7-on-7 or actual team drills. He is continually pushing the ball down the field.
That's a good thing for them, bad thing for other people if they can actually protect him and Rashee Rice can remain on the field along with the guys that they had last year that are super, super fast. I'm telling you, man, this could be a bad thing for other teams in the AFC.
Yeah, I think that for Kansas City, the talent is there, especially at the wide receiver spot with Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, and Hollywood Brown. I mean, those are 3 really explosive players, and we'll see what happens with Rashee Rice and how many games he might miss here. But even so, Travis Kelce, who is getting older, right? It's a fact, it's true, but still, he's one of the best tight ends in the league. Obviously, Isaiah Pacheco is someone that runs very hard, and he is able to
too hard. Yeah,
literally just muster yards out of thin air with his will to get the yards. So, like, they have weapons on the offensive side of the ball here, and I know that a lot of people, they watched the Super Bowl, they saw the Eagles loss that they took, and, I think the consensus at the time was, all right, Chiefs are done. They're on the downfall. And look, me covering the Ravens and not being able to get over that hump, the Bills not being able to get over that hump. Really, the only team that's been able to do it is the Bengals, and they didn't even win the Super Bowl the year they did it. Like, Kansas City is still a team to go through in the AFC until they are not, until a team shows that they can beat them.
I want to put you on the spot and ask you a question. You just mentioned the Ravens, how hard y'all have had to get past them. You want them to fall off? You want them to fall off and somebody else knock them off, or do you want to beat them? Is this a situation where you not only do you want the Ravens to go to the Super Bowl, but you want them to go through them, or do you want the Chiefs to kind of like have all of these things go wrong and fall off, and then y'all kind of skate to the Super Bowl?
Are you talking in the playoffs, like have another team beat the Chiefs and then meet someone else in the championship game? Like,
yeah.
Man, I'd want to beat them. I mean, that's
Come on,
kind of
that's
like
what I'm talking about,
like
Kev. That's what I'm
think,
saying.
look, the players, and I think everybody kind of echoes it. Like, in order to be the best, you have to beat the best. Like,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
it
about.
feels a lot more satisfying, right? And I know, look, the Ravens, when they won their last Super Bowl in 2012, 2013, they beat the Colts. That was rookie Andrew Luck. But then they went to Denver and beat Peyton Manning in that #1 seed. Then they went to New England and got rid of those demons from the Billy Cundiff, Lee Evans loss last year. And then San Francisco was a heck of a team in the NFC, and they took it to them until the lights went out, and then they ended up winning it anyway, so it didn't matter. But that was a gauntlet of a postseason stretch. Like, it would have felt, and the Ravens could have done it last season. Like, they could have beaten Pittsburgh, who they did, and that's their heated division rival. If they beat Buffalo, that's a team that is obviously considered one of the top echelon teams in the conference. And then they would have met Kansas City in the AFC Championship game. That would have been an opportunity. And then he would have had to beat Philly. Like, that would have been rewarding to win the Super Bowl. And look, I know there is the argument that, just take the 6 seed or the 7 seed and help all those teams win. Like, I get it. A Super Bowl is a Super Bowl. It doesn't matter who you beat. But still, it'd feel a lot more rewarding if the Ravens were the team that were able to win the title of, we knocked off Kansas City and won a Super Bowl. That'd be pretty sweet. Yeah.
See there. So that's called, what we call that in the barbershop and the hood is, we ain't ducking no smoke. We want all that smoke. That's Kevin Ostriker. I'm gonna send this to Locked On Chiefs. He said he want all that smoke. He ain't ducking nothing from y'all. All right, I'll tell you something that has happened. New England has had a turnaround, and there's probably not one team in the league that I feel better about relative to how badly I felt about them a year ago. It all comes down to their structure. It also comes down to the fact that I think they made some good draft picks. A lot of people talk about their offensive line and Will Campbell, but somebody else, another rookie, has emerged as a very, very good alternative to getting their line better. Check out my man Nick Cattles from Locked On Patriots.
The staff has made its first, what I would consider, surprise roster decision for the 2025 season. And that surprise decision is Jared Wilson being your starting left guard. Let me just say, this is crazy impressive. Like, this is almost banana land stuff for Jared Wilson. And here's why. We all know he's a rookie. He's a rookie, and he happens to be a rookie who won the left guard gig in 5 days. That's all it took him, was 5 days. He wasn't on the field much, if at all, at OTAs. He wasn't on the field much, if at all, at mandatory minicamp. He missed all that time on the field. He's not repping physically. And then you get to training camp, and he was actually taking snaps at left guard.
Let me tell you why this is impressive. Because at Georgia, he was a center, okay? And Georgia's guard in college is now competing at center with the Detroit Lions. I think that's huge, man, that they were able to recognize that this kid could play more than just a center position. And now he's sitting right there next to Will Campbell, and their whole left side is now rookies.
And that's what training camp was for, right? Experimenting, figuring out what guys are good at, seeing if you can maybe squeeze something out of a guy you didn't know that he even had. And, credit to New England for doing it, and those are moves that not only can help you as a team, but can jumpstart a young player's career. Yep. And that, to me, it's a win-win for both sides. And we kind of talked about it a little bit with the Jets and the state of the AFC East right now, where New England, I think, has the potential to really take a huge leap this season. They spent the money, they brought in the veterans, they had a really good draft, in my opinion, and they're obviously getting contributions from those young players already. First-year guys, second-year guys, obviously Drake May. It's all going to depend on how big of a leap he can personally take. But again, protecting your young quarterback is one of the most important things you can do for a guy that is still trying to find his way in the NFL. And the fact that they did invest in Will Campbell, they now are being able to plug and play guys at different spots and find guys. It's almost like putting a puzzle together. You're have all these pieces and you're all right, where does this guy best fit? Where does that guy best fit? Especially with the versatility that a lot of these linemen have nowadays, where you can plug and play them in a lot of different positions. It's not every guy, but it's a pretty big uptick, I think, compared to what we saw over the last handful of years, where it seems like almost anybody can play a position or two. I know the Jaguar-Raven connection, Wig. The Jaguar signed Pat McCary, who can play literally every position on that offensive line. Yeah. So it's becoming more and more popular, and you just have to work with guys, figure out where their best spots are. And I think for New England, being able to do that and get immediate returns on that's huge because it's a position that you're like, okay, where are we going to see a guy? Who's going to be the one that steps up? Do we have enough there? And you find someone to put there that you never even thought was going to be there in the first place.
Yep, he provides that versatility like McCary, who I saw him today too. I promise I thought about you because every time I see Pat McCary, he's got a fresh ball fade, and I'm like, this dude got to be getting a haircut every day. There ain't no way in the world that fade. Every time I go to practice, it looked like he just got out of the barber chair, man. Maybe he's trying to tell me something. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you. Thank y'all for making Locked On NFL your first listen. And for your second listen, check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily baseball locks and football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Ostriker, I got to go get me a fade, man. I got to get somebody to cut my stuff up and get on out of here. And I'm going to let you do the same thing. By the time I see you next week, games will have been played, and we will have a little bit more of a canvas to pull from to let these people know what's going on. Until then, y'all make sure y'all tap into Locked On Ravens. Ostriker will give it to you like you can't get it nowhere else. The best Ravens coverage in the country. Of course, you can find him right here on Locked On NFL with me every single Tuesday. We'll see you later here on Locked On NFL. Take care.